I was born naturally dazed, living every day as if I were tipsy. So when Adrian Blake forced his way into my life, I thought he was only playing with me. Every time I failed to run away and he caught me again, I gave him a thumbs up. Your hide and seek skills are improving fast. I only hid for half an hour, and you already found me. And just like that, I muddled through 3 years of a game where I ran and he chased. Until today, I found out I was pregnant after nausea and vomiting. And I took the report home, wanting to tell Adrian Blake, whom doctors had diagnosed as infertile. But then he got into a car accident and lost his memory. His childhood sweetheart cried as she blamed me. If he had not rushed back to celebrate your birthday, none of this would have happened. He has forgotten you completely. I am begging you, stop clinging to him, okay? I slowly walked away for a while, my lower belly aching faintly. I had the feeling I had forgotten something. Forget it. I would think of it when I remembered. I stood under the street light for a while and scratched my head. Then I remembered. I turned around back and pushed the door open. I poked my head inside and held out my wrist, revealing the silver-gray tracker on it. I left in too much of a hurry and forgot this. Can you help me take it off? Vanessa Hale raised an eyebrow and hesitated. What is that? I explained calmly. A tracker. It is paired with the one on Adrian Blake's wrist. If you want me to stop showing up in front of him, help me unlock this bracelet first. He was the one who had insisted I wear this tracker. I had thought it was harmless. It was not as if I had ever planned to run somewhere. He could not find me. But things were different now. He had forgotten me. Mr. and Mrs. Blake's expressions changed slightly. They exchanged a look. Vanessa clenched her fingertips and looked at the assistant. Did you know about this? Adrian's assistant looked troubled and stammered. Mr. Blake ordered that this bracelet could never be taken off for the rest of her life, so no one ever considered a removal plan. If it is removed by force, it will break. Mr. Blake slammed his hand onto the table, his voice thinking, this is absurd. A grown man doing something like this. If word gets out what people think. He turned to the assistant. Call someone to remove it now. A specialist arrived quickly and simply cut it open with pliers. Vanessa took the 2 bracelets and tossed them into the trash. There you can go. I had just reached the door when a hoarse murmur came from behind me. No, do not go. My steps paused, and I looked back in the hospital bed. Adrian's eyes were closed, his brows tightly furrowed. Vanessa stepped forward and grabbed his hand. Adrian, I am here. Do not be afraid. As she spoke, she turned and shot me a look. Leave now. Mr. and Mrs. Blake stood on either side of me and escorted me out of the room. Once we were outside, Mr. Blake handed me a check. Blake, family will not shortchange you on what you are owed. But Adrian and you do not belong in the same world. His wife can only be Vanessa. We will choose a child from an adoption agency and have Adrian and Vanessa raise him together. Every trace of your existence will be erased from now on. This has nothing to do with you. Only when I reached the airport did the sadness come slowly, belatedly rushing up inside me. Adrian used to always say I was silly. Actually, I was not silly. I was just a bit slower than other people. But now he was the truly silly one. His brain had been damaged in the crash. I crouched in front of the boarding gate and dry heaved for a long time. When I straightened and wiped the corner of my mouth, I finally remembered. Oh no, I forgot to tell them I was pregnant. The doctor had misdiagnosed him. Adrian could have children after all. They did not need to adopt an heir. I pulled out my phone and tried to call them. But no matter what I did, the call would not go through. It seemed they really wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Still, they had given me so much money. I could raise the child alone. I soon settled down in a new city. My belly grew day by day. When it was time to give birth, I called an ambulance by myself. I raised my child well, but he looked too much like Adrian. His eyes, his nose bridge, even the curve of his lips. When he pressed them together, it was like they had been cut from the same mold. His personality was similar, too. When he fell, he did not cry. He climbed up by himself and patted his knees. Look king, solemn and precocious. Exactly like that father of his. Soon, it was open day at his preschool. Other children had their fathers and mothers sitting beside them. Only the seat next to me was empty. A little kid ran over and asked him, Owen, why did your dad not come? I opened my mouth, but my mind went blank for a beat. Slow and clumsy, I did not know how to answer. He lifted his face and said very seriously, It is enough that mom came. I can take care of mom by myself. I do not need a dad. Several parents nearby laughed when they heard him. This child is so sensible. One parent looked at him a few more times, suddenly made a sound of surprise. Why does this kid look more and more familiar? He tilted his head and studied Owen for a while. before slapping his thigh. I remember now he is practically a smaller version of my boss. But our boss and his wife are very loving. He did not want his wife to suffer through pregnancy, so they even adopted their child. I froze where I stood, my mind slowly processing the meaning of those words. Several parents exchanged glances, their eyes circling over me. A little boy suddenly laughed and pointed at Owen. Then aren't you a bastard? Your mom is dirty. She is the other woman that rich boss keeps outside. No wonder your dad did not come. You are an illegitimate child. An adult beside him tugged him back, but there was a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth. Owen's small shoulders trembled. He clenched his fists and lunged forward. Do not talk about my mom. By the time I came back to my senses, he was already sitting on top of the other boy. The child's father rushed over and lifted Owen up. The little boy seized the chance to scratch him, leaving a long, bloody mark across Owen's cheek. The man glanced at me. Seeing that I was raising a child alone, he decided I was easy to bully. He held Owen up and sneered. Since this child has no father to discipline him, I will do it for his dad. Then he raised his hand and slapped Owen's backside. Owen's eyes reddened, but he bit his lip hard and refused to let his tears fall. My head buzzed. I rushed forward like a mad woman, snatched my child back, held him in my arms, and turned to leave. But in the middle of the night, Owen developed a fever. His little face burned red, and even the breath coming from him was hot. I carried him on my back and ran all the way to the emergency room. The hallway was packed with people. After registering, I held my burning child and curled up on a chair. Helplessness rose over me in waves. That moment, a faint murmur came from my arms, "Daddy, Daddy." I held him in silence for a moment, tightened my arms around him, and pressed my cheek against his hair. Your dad does not remember us. He went to be someone else's dad. The intercom called our number just then. I quickly stood up with Owen in my arms and hurried toward the exam room. Just as I reached the door, a woman suddenly squeezed in from the side and rushed ahead of me. My child scraped his hand. Let us go first. The moment our eyes met, both of us froze. It was Vanessa Hale. Her eyes fell on the child in my arms. She frowned, her tone turning uncertain. Why does this child look so much like impossible? The doctor said. Adrian cannot have children. At all. I looked sincere and was about to say that was a misdiagnosis. Unsteady footsteps came from behind her. Adrian Blake stepped to Vanessa's side. What is wrong? The moment I looked up, I met Adrian's dark, deep eyes. For some reason, the back of my neck went cold. A vicious flicker passed through Vanessa's eyes. Before I could speak, she softened her voice and turned toward him. Adrian, you forgot. But she is the one who used to bully me all the time. She even threatened me just now. She said she would not let me live peacefully. She shrank into Adrian's arms, her fingers tugging lightly at the hem of his jacket. I am scared. Teach her a lesson for me. Have her sent out of the country, okay? Adrian let go of Vanessa and lowered his eyes to look at her. His tone gave nothing away. She bullied you? Then he released Vanessa's hand and walked toward me by step. I backed away. His gaze burned and his voice carried a faint hoarseness. What is your name? My heart jumped under his stare. Lily Parker. It felt so familiar. Every time he came to catch me, he had that same finesse, radical look in his eyes. After a while, he lifted his chin toward the nurse. Let her see the doctor first. The child has a high fever. Behind him, Vanessa nearly ground her teeth to pieces, staring at me with hatred. Fortunately, Owen was fine. After the 4-drip, we could go home. As I walked, I thought about everything that had happened today. I had to move to another city. I could not stay here anymore. I was still wondering where I should go, when an arm suddenly reached from behind and covered my mouth and nose. I lost consciousness in an instant. I opened my eyes again. I was in a pitch-black little room. Adrian's clear, cold voice scraped past my ear. Lily Parker, be good and become my woman. I can give you everything you want. You are not allowed to run. I moved my hands and feet in the faint clinking of metal. I looked down at the cuffs and shackles locked around me. Familiar behavior. Familiar lines. Familiar Adrian. People say you cannot step into the same river twice. But Adrian could. For a moment, I was in a daze. I almost thought I had gone back in time. Why did it take you so long to find me this time? I did not know which part of that sentence had struck him. His pupils shrank violently. He raised a hand and pressed hard against his temple. His whole body swayed. The next second, he collapsed straight toward me. At that moment, the door was violently pushed open. Vanessa stood at the very front. Behind her were Mr. and Mrs. Blake. Vanessa's gaze passed over everything. and landed on my shackled wrists and ankles. Her whole body swayed. Mrs. Blake clutched the door frame and almost fainted. Lily Parker, why is it you again? How did the two of you end up together again? The heavy, metallic thud of Adrian's body collapsing against mine sent a dull vibration through the floorboards. I sat there, my wrists still bound by the heavy iron shackles, his head resting heavily against my collarbone. His breathing was shallow, his forehead burning with a feverish heat that seeped through my thin, hospital-issued shirt. For a few seconds, my brain did its usual slow-motion slide. I blinked, looking down at his dark, messy hair. Oh, I thought. He really did faint. And he's still as heavy as a sack of flour. Adrian. Vanessa's voice pierced the dark, cramped room like shattered glass. She scrambled forward, her high heels clicking frantically against the concrete floor. She reached out, her manicured fingers trembling as she tried to pull Adrian away from me. What did you do to him? Lily Parker, what did you do to him? Mr. and Mrs. Blake rushed in right behind her, their faces pale under the dim, flickering light of the single bulb overhead. Mrs. Blake clutched her husband's arm, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and disgust as she looked at the chains binding my hands and feet. What is the meaning of this? Mr. Blake's voice shook, though he tried to maintain his usual commanding tone. Adrian locked her up? Again? He has amnesia, Dad. He doesn't know what he's doing. Vanessa cried, her voice cracking with desperation. She glared at me, her eyes filled with venom. It's her. She must have drugged him, or bewitched him. How else could he find her? We erased every trace of her. I blinked at Vanessa, my mind slowly processing her words. I didn't drug him. I said softly, my voice hoarse from the dust in the room. I was just walking down the street. Someone grabbed me from behind. It smelled like peaches. No, wait, peaches and chloroform. Shut up. Vanessa screamed, her face contorting. Get her away from him. Call the guards. Vanessa, calm down. Mr. Blake snapped, though his own forehead was slick with sweat. He turned to the assistant, who was standing awkwardly by the doorway, looking as if he wished the earth would swallow him whole. Leo, get the keys. Unlock those chains. Now. Before the media gets wind of this absolute madness. Leo scurried forward, his hands shaking as he fished a ring of keys from his pocket. He knelt beside me, carefully avoiding my eyes as he unlocked the heavy iron cuffs around my wrists and ankles. The cold metal clattered to the floor, leaving deep, red rings around my skin. I rubbed my wrists, feeling a dull ache. But mostly I was just tired. Where is Owen? I asked, looking up at Mr. Blake. My voice was quiet, but it seemed to freeze the room. My son, where is he? Vanessa stiffened. Your son? You mean that little bastard? He's probably right. Where he belongs, in some dirty public hospital ward. No, Leo stammered, raising his hand slightly. Mr. Blake, young Master Adrian, before he brought Miss Parker here, he ordered the private medical team to transfer the child to the VIP wing of the Blake Family Hospital. He personally oversaw the child's admission and hired top pediatric specialists. The boy is safe and sleeping. Vanessa's breath hitched. What? Why would Adrian do that? He doesn't even know who that kid is, he said. Leo swallowed hard, glancing nervously at Mr. and Mrs. Blake. He said the child looked too much like him. He said he couldn't let his own blood suffer. His own blood? Mrs. Blake gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. But the doctors, they said Adrian was sterile after that childhood illness. It was a definitive diagnosis. Perhaps. I offered, scratching my cheek slowly. Perhaps the doctor was just bad at his job. My mom always said you should get a second opinion. But we didn't have the money for a second opinion back then. Be quiet, Lily, Mrs. Blake snapped, though her voice lacked its usual venom, replaced instead by a growing, terrified uncertainty. She looked at Adrian, who was now being lifted onto a stretcher by two paramedics who had just rushed into the room. As they wheeled Adrian out, his hand suddenly twitched. His fingers curled, reaching out blindly into the empty air, as if trying to grab onto something or someone he had lost. Lily. A faint, barely audible murmur escaped his lips. Vanessa's face turned paper-white. She quickly grabbed his hand, squeezing it tight. I'm here, Adrian. I'm right here. But Adrian's brow only furrowed deeper, a look of intense pain crossing his handsome features as they wheeled him into the corridor. I stood up slowly, my legs a bit stiff. I patted my clothes down, trying to brush off the dust. Where are you going? Mr. Blake blocked my path, his expression grim. To see Owen, I said simply. He gets scared when he wakes up in a strange place. And he has a fever. You are not going anywhere near the VIP wing, Vanessa hissed, standing protectively near the exit. We allowed you to leave 5 years ago with a check. You should have stayed gone. I did stay gone, I pointed out, feeling a bit confused. I went to City C. But Adrian brought me back. If you want me to leave, you should tell him. He's the one who keeps chasing me. You. Enough? Mr. Blake interrupted, his voice heavy with exhaustion. He looked at me, his eyes sharp and calculating. Lily, we will accompany you to the hospital. If that child is indeed Adrian's, we will need a DNA test. Until then, you will stay under our supervision. Do not think of running. The Blake family has eyes everywhere. I nodded slowly. Okay, but can I get a bun first? I didn't eat dinner and my stomach is making noise. Mr. Blake stared at me, his lips twitching in disbelief. He seemed completely disarmed by my lack of tension. In the face of a kidnapping, a forced confinement, and a multi-million-dollar family crisis, I was asking for a bun. Leo, Mr. Blake sighed, rubbing his temples. Get her a bun. The Blake family hospital was quiet at 3 in the morning. The polished marble floors reflected the sterile, white lights overhead. I sat on a plush leather sofa in the private waiting room of the VIP pediatric wing, chewing slowly on the red bean bun Leo had bought for me. Through the glass partition, I could see Owen. He was lying in a large, comfortable bed, and 4 drip attached to his small hand. His fever had clearly gone down, his breathing was even, and the flush on his cheeks had faded to a healthy pink. He really does look like Adrian, Mrs. Blake murmured. She was standing near the glass, her eyes fixed on Owen's sleeping face. There was a strange, complicated look in her eyes, a mix of aristocratic pride, disbelief, and a maternal warmth that she was desperately trying to suppress. The nose, the jawline, even the way he curls his fingers when he sleeps, she whispered, almost to herself. It's exactly how Adrian looked when he was a boy. It's just a coincidence, Vanessa said quickly, her voice tight with panic. She was pacing the floor, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Auntie, don't let her fool you. There are millions of children in the world who look alike. Besides, Adrian's medical records are clear. He cannot have children. If this kid is hers, he must be some other man's bastard. I swallowed the last bite of my bun and wiped my mouth with a napkin. He doesn't have another father. I've only ever been with Adrian. Actually, I don't really know how to find another man. It's too much work. You. Vanessa glared at me, her eyes red. Stop acting so innocent. You planned this, didn't you? You knew Adrian would lose his memory, so you brought this child back to claim the Blake family fortune. I looked at her, genuinely puzzled. How could I know Adrian would have a car accident? I'm slow, Vanessa, but I'm not a wizard. Auntie, look at her. Vanessa turned to Mrs. Blake, stomping her foot. She's mocking me. Mrs. Blake didn't answer. Her eyes were still fixed on Owen. Just then, the door to the waiting room opened, and a doctor in a white lab coat stepped inside. He held a clipboard in his hands, his expression solemn. Mr. Blake, Mrs. Blake, the doctor said, bowing slightly. The preliminary DNA testing results are ready. We ran a rapid familial match using the blood samples taken from young Master Adrian and the child, Owen. The room went dead silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade away. Vanessa held her breath, her fingers digging into the strap of her designer handbag. Mrs. Blake stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. And what does it say? The doctor looked at the report, then at me, and finally at Mrs. Blake. There is a 99.99% probability of a biological relationship. Owen is indeed Mr. Adrian, Blake's biological son. The clipboard slipped from Vanessa's fingers, clattering loudly against the marble floor. She stumbled back a step, her face completely drained of color. No, that's impossible. The doctors in the capital, they said. It seems the previous diagnosis of infertility was either highly premature or manipulated, the doctor said carefully, choosing his words with extreme caution. Furthermore, we reviewed the young master's medical history from 5 years ago. There are several anomalies in the lab reports filed back then.
It
Appears someone paid off the lab technicians to alter the results. Mrs. Blake's head snapped toward Vanessa. Manipulated? Paid off. I don't know anything about that. Vanessa stammered, her voice rising in panic. Auntie, you have to believe me. Why would I do something like that? Because, a cold, rasping voice echoed from the doorway. If I was sterile, my parents would never allow Lily to stay by my side. And you would be the only suitable match left for me. Everyone turned. Adrian was standing at the entrance of the VIP wing. He was dressed in a simple, patient gown, his forehead bandaged, his face pale but incredibly sharp. His dark eyes were cold, like deep pools of ice, and they were fixed entirely on Vanessa. He was leaning heavily against the doorframe, but his posture was upright, carrying the terrifying authority that had made him the undisputed head of the Blake Corporation at such a young age. Adrian, Vanessa gasped, taking a step toward him. You're awake. You shouldn't be out of bed. Your head injury. My head injury is fine, Adrian said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. In fact, it's better than fine. The impact of the collapse earlier, it seems, to have cleared up the blockages in my brain. He took a slow step forward. The authority radiating from him made Vanessa take a step back. I remember everything, Adrian whispered. The silence that followed was suffocating. I sat on the sofa, looking at Adrian. Oh, I said, clapping my hands lightly. You remembered? That's great. Then do you remember where you put my silver gray tracker? The one you cut off earlier? It was actually quite comfortable. Once I got used to it. Adrian's cold facade cracked for a fraction of a second. A look of deep, agonizing guilt passed through his eyes as he looked at me. He walked past Vanessa, past his mother, and stopped right in front of my sofa. He slowly knelt down, his tall frame suddenly looking very small as he looked up at me. He reached out, his hand trembling as he gently took my wrist. His fingers brushed against the raw, red marks left by the shackles he had locked around me only hours ago. Lily, his voice broke, thick with emotion. I hurt you again. It's okay, I said, patting his head with my free hand. His hair was soft, just like Owen's. I'm used to it. You always like to lock things up when you get angry. Last time, it was my favorite notebook because I drew a smiley face on it instead of your portrait. I'm sorry, he whispered, pressing his forehead against my knee. I'm so sorry. Lily. Vanessa watched this scene, her eyes wide with horror and jealousy. Adrian.
how?
Can you apologize to her? She's a nobody. She hid your child from you for 5 years. She made you a laughingstock. Adrian didn't look up from my knee. Leo. Yes, Mr. Blake. Leo stepped forward instantly, his posture straight. Find the doctor who issued my infertility report 5 years ago, Adrian commanded, his voice turning into ice once more. And find the bank accounts of Vanessa Hale's personal assistants. If there is even a single penny transferred from the Hale family to that doctor, I want them both in prison by tomorrow morning.
No.
Adrian, you can't do this. Vanessa cried, rushing forward to grab his arm. We grew up together. My family helped yours. You can't ruin me for this. Slow-witted woman. Your family helped mine because you wanted a piece of the Blake Corporation, Adrian said, finally looking up at her, his eyes devoid of any warmth.
And as
For Lily, she is my wife. She has always been my wife. If anyone tried to replace her, it was you. Your wife. Mrs. Blake gasped. Adrian, you never married her. We registered our marriage in City C 5 years ago, before the accident. Adrian said calmly, standing up. I kept the marriage certificate in my private safe, the one only I have the fingerprint access to. I was planning to announce it on her birthday, the day of the accident. He turned to his mother, his gaze unwavering. You and father forced her away. While I was in a coma, you erased her existence. You told me she ran away with another man. And, because I lost my memory, I believed you. Mrs. Blake's face turned red, then pale. She opened her mouth to argue, but Mr. Blake laid a heavy hand on her shoulder, shaking his head. Adrian, Mr. Blake said quietly. We did what we thought was best for the family. Then from now on, I will do what I think is best for my family, Adrian replied. He turned his back on them, his focus returning entirely to me. Lily, let's go see our son. I stood up holding his hand. Okay. But Adrian, you should put some pants on. The hospital gown is open in the back. Adrian stiffened, his face flushing slightly as he quickly pulled the gown
Closed.
I couldn't help but smile. He really was a bit silly sometimes. The private ward was warm and quiet. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic hum of the heart monitor. Owen was still asleep, but his breathing had deepened, a sign that the fever was fully breaking. His small hands were curled into loose fists, resting near his
Chin.
Adrian stood by the side of the bed, his gaze fixed on the little boy.
For a
long time, he didn't move or speak. His hand hovered over Owen's forehead, trembling slightly, before he gently brushed a strand of dark hair away from the boy's eyes. "He's so small," Adrian whispered, his voice cracking. "He's 5 years old, but he looks so small." "He eats a lot," I said, pulling up a chair and sitting down. "But he runs around too much so he doesn't gain weight. He likes to chase the neighbors."
Dog.
I told him the dog is faster, but he doesn't believe me. He has your stubbornness. Adrian let out a soft, choked laugh that sounded more like a sob. He turned to look at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Lily, how did you survive? 5 years ago, my parents gave you a check, but you didn't cash it, did you?" I blinked, trying to remember.
Oh, the check.
I put it in my textbook.
But then,
I forgot which textbook it was, and I donated all my old college books to a library in the mountains. I hope whoever found it had a good time. Adrian stared at me, a mixture of exasperation and deep, aching affection on his
face.
He knelt beside my chair, taking both of my hands in his. "You didn't cash
The check.
You had no money. You were pregnant, and you were alone in a strange
City.
Why didn't you come find me? Why didn't you write to me?" "I tried to call you," I said softly, my voice quiet. "But the number was always
Blocked.
And then I saw the news. They said you were going to marry Vanessa. They said you had adopted a child together. I thought if you had a new family, you wouldn't want a slow-witted wife anymore. I didn't want to make you look bad." "You could never make me look bad," Adrian said, his voice fierce as he pressed his lips against the palms of my hands. "Never. I was the fool. I let them lie.
To me.
I let them convince me that the empty space in my heart was just a side effect of the brain damage." "But your brain is okay now, right?" I asked, leaning forward to touch the bandage on his temple. "Does it still hurt?" "Only when I think about how much time we lost," he murmured. "It's okay," I said, smiling a little. "I'm slow anyway.
5 years to me feels
like 5 days. I just took a slightly longer nap." Adrian looked at me, his eyes softening into a warmth I hadn't seen in 5 long
years.
He pulled me down into a gentle embrace, burying his face in my shoulder. "I won't let anyone hurt you again, Lily. I swear." Just then, a small, sleepy voice broke the silence of the room. "Mom." We both froze. Owen was sitting up in bed, his small eyes rubbing his face, looking confused. He blinked at me, then his eyes drifted to the tall man holding his mother. His little brow instantly furrowed, his shoulders tensing up in a way that was hilariously identical to Adrian's. "Who are you?" Owen demanded, his voice small but sharp. "Why are you hugging my mom? Let go of her." Adrian slowly released me and stood up. He looked down at the miniature version of himself, his expression a mix of awe and nervousness. The powerful, cold president of the Blake Corporation was suddenly looking like a schoolboy called to the principal's office. "Owen," Adrian said, his voice unusually gentle. I am your father." Owen looked at Adrian, then at me. "Mom, is this the dad who forgot us?" I nodded slowly.
Yes.
His head got broken in a car, so he forgot. But he got his head broken again today, so now he remembers. Owen digested this explanation with a solemn nod. He looked back at Adrian, his small face serious. "You have a bandage on your head. Does it hurt?" "No," Adrian said quickly, his voice tight. "It doesn't hurt at all." "Good," Owen said, crossing his small arms over his chest. "Because if you forgot us again, I would have to take care of Mom by myself. And she's very bad at finding her way home. I have to hold her hand every time we go to the supermarket." Adrian's eyes welled up with tears again. He stepped closer to the bed, his voice trembling. "I won't forget. I will hold both of your hands from now on." Owen studied him for a long moment, then slowly reached out his small, chubby hand. Adrian immediately took it, holding it as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. While the hospital room was a sanctuary of quiet reconciliation, the world outside was rapidly turning into a battlefield. By 9 o'clock the next morning, the police had arrived at the Blake family hospital. Vanessa Hale was arrested in the lobby. She was dressed in her designer clothes, surrounded by her lawyers, but the evidence Leo had gathered overnight was absolute. The medical files from 5 years ago had been retrieved from a secure server, along with bank records showing a transfer of $3 million from a shell company owned by Vanessa to the head of the fertility clinic. This is a mistake, Vanessa shrieked as the handcuffs clinked around her wrists, a poetic echo of the shackles she had happily seen on me the night before. Adrian, you can't do this to me. Auntie, help me. Mrs. Blake stood in the lobby, looking older than her years.
She didn't step
forward. The revelation that Vanessa had faked Adrian's infertility, effectively denying the Blake family their biological heir for 5 years and driving Adrian's wife into poverty, had shattered Mrs. Blake's trust. You lied to us, Vanessa, Mrs. Blake said, her voice trembling. You made me believe my son could never have children. You made me hate the woman who was carrying our blood. I will not help you. As the police led Vanessa away, the crowd of reporters outside the hospital went into a frenzy, their cameras flashing through the glass doors. In the VIP lounge upstairs, Adrian watched the scene on a television screen. His face was cold, devoid of any pity. The Hale family will try to bail her out, Mr. Blake said, walking into the
lounge.
He looked tired, his usual sharp posture slightly slumped. But I have already instructed our legal team to block any attempts. The Blake family will not tolerate this kind of betrayal. He paused, looking at Adrian, who was standing by the window. Adrian,
Mr. Blake sighed.
About Lily and the child. I admit, your mother and I made a grave mistake. We were blinded by our desire for a suitable
match.
We didn't realize. You didn't realize that Lily was the only one who loved me for who I was not. For my title, Adrian said, not turning around. You thought she was easy to bully because she is slow. But her slow mind only means she doesn't harbor the malice and greed that your suitable matches do. He turned, his eyes piercing his father's. I will be taking Lily and Owen back to my villa. From now on, the Blake Corporation's affairs will be handled by the
board.
I am taking a leave of absence. A leave of absence? Mr. Blake was shocked. But the company has enough money, Adrian interrupted. My family does not have enough time. I have 5 years of lost birthdays, first steps, and scraped knees to make up for. Do not contact us unless it is an absolute emergency. Before Mr. Blake could argue, the door to the lounge slid open and I walked in, carrying Owen on my hip. Owen was wearing a pair of oversized dinosaur pajamas that Adrian had ordered for him, and he was happily munching on an apple. Adrian, I said, the doctor says Owen can go home now, but we don't have our things. My favorite frying pan is still in City C. We will buy a new one, Adrian said, his cold eyes instantly melting into warmth as he walked over to us. He took Owen from my arms, balancing the boy easily on his shoulder. In fact, we will buy the whole store. Whatever you want, Lily. I only need one frying pan, I said, thinking about it. 2 is too hard to clean. Adrian laughed, a sound so genuine and light that Mr. Blake looked stunned. He hadn't heard his son laugh like that since before the accident. Okay, Adrian murmured, kissing my forehead. 1 frying pan it is. Adrian's private villa was located on a quiet hill overlooking the city. It was surrounded by a massive garden filled with white roses, my favorite flower. Though I had forgotten telling him that. The house was incredibly clean, but it felt cold and empty, like a museum. It's very big, I said, stepping into the grand marble foyer. You must get lost a lot. I did, Adrian said softly, setting Owen down. Every day for 5 years, I wandered through this house feeling like I was looking for something I couldn't find. Now I know what it was. He grabbed my hand, his fingers interlocking with mine. Owen, meanwhile, had already spotted the massive staircase and was staring up at it with wide, excited eyes.
Mom,
there are so many stairs.
Can I slide down the
banister? No, Adrian and I said in unison. Owen pouted, but his attention was quickly diverted by a large black Labrador that came trotting out of the kitchen. The dog stopped, sniffed Owen, and then began wagging its tail furiously, licking the boy's face. A dog. Owen squealed, wrapping his arms around the Labrador's neck. Mom, look, it's a big dog. He doesn't run away from me. That's Buster, Adrian said, a small smile playing on his lips. I got him 3 years ago. I think, subconsciously, I bought him because I remembered. You like dogs. He's very handsome, I said, bending down to pat Buster's head. He has very clean teeth. The first few days at the villa were peaceful, almost dreamlike. Adrian spent every waking moment with us. He didn't go to the office, he didn't answer his phone unless it was Leo calling with updates on Vanessa's trial. Instead, he learned how to cook. It was a hilarious sight. The brilliant Adrian Blake, who could negotiate multi-billion-dollar deals with a single word, was standing in a flour-dusted apron, looking completely panicked as a pancake stuck to the ceiling. "Lily," he called out, his voice tense. "The batter, it's not behaving." I walked into the kitchen, Owen trailing behind me. We both looked up at the ceiling, where a perfectly round, slightly burnt pancake was hanging precariously. "I think you need more butter," I said. "No," Owen added, shaking his head solemnly. "I think you need a new brain, Dad. Even Mom can cook pancakes, and she once tried to boil an egg in the microwave." Adrian looked at his son, then at me, and suddenly burst into laughter. He pulled us both into his arms, ignoring the flour that was transferring onto his expensive cashmere sweater. "I am the luckiest man alive," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're also covered in flour," I pointed out. "I don't care," he said, kissing my cheek. But our peace was temporarily interrupted on the fourth evening. Leo arrived at the villa, his expression grim. He held a thick folder in his hands. "Mr. Blake," Leo said, bowing. "The investigation into the Hale family is complete. It's worse than we thought." Adrian's expression instantly turned cold. He gestured for Leo to follow him into the study, but I followed them anyway because I wanted to see if there were any of those nice mint chocolates on his desk. "What did you find?" Adrian asked, sitting behind his desk. "Vanessa Hale wasn't just faking the infertility reports," Leo said, opening the folder. "We traced the maintenance records of your car from 5 years ago. The brake failure that caused your accident. It wasn't an accident." Adrian's eyes narrowed into slits. "Go on." "The mechanic who serviced your car 2 days before the crash received a massive deposit from an offshore account," Leo explained, handing over a sheet of financial records. "The account belongs to Vanessa's father, Richard Hale. It seems they wanted to stage a minor accident to keep you from rushing to Lily's birthday party. They wanted to create a situation where they could save you and bind the Blake family to theirs. But they didn't expect the truck," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Yes," Leo nodded. "The truck was an unexpected variable. The crash was much worse than they intended, resulting in your coma and subsequent amnesia. When you woke up without your memories, they seized the opportunity to erase Lily and position Vanessa as your savior." I sat on the small sofa in the corner, chewing on a mint chocolate. "So, Vanessa made the car break? That's very dangerous. People can get hurt in cars." "She almost killed me, Lily," Adrian said, his voice shaking with a mixture of rage and horror. "And she kept me from you. She made my son live without a father for 5 years." He stood up, his tall frame radiating a cold, terrifying aura. "Leo." "Yes, Mr. Blake? Hand everything over to the Attorney General. I don't want just Vanessa in prison. I want the entire Hale family ruined. Every business they own, every asset they have, crush them. By the end of the month, I want the name Hale to be nothing more than a warning in this city." "Understood, Mr. Blake," Leo said, bowing deeply before quickly exiting the room. Adrian stood by the window, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. His shoulders were tense, his breathing ragged. I stood up slowly, walked over to him, and gently wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. I pressed my cheek against his back, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. "Adrian," I said softly, "the air is very cold today. You should close the window." Adrian froze. Slowly, the tension left his shoulders. He turned around in my arms, looking down at me with eyes that were suddenly soft and vulnerable. "Lily, aren't you angry?" he asked, his voice cracking. "They ruined 5 years of our lives. They made you suffer." "I'm not angry," I said, looking up at him. "Anger is too heavy. It makes my head hurt. And besides, we are here now. Owen is healthy. You remember me. And we have a very big garden with roses. If I spend my time being angry, I won't have time to smell the flowers." Adrian stared at me, his eyes filling with tears. He leaned down, pressing his forehead against mine. "You are too good for this world, Lily." "No," I said, smiling. "I'm just a bit slow. but being slow means I can see the nice things that fast people run past. The downfall of the Hale family was swift and absolute, with the evidence of attempted murder, bribery, and financial fraud delivered directly to the highest authorities by the Blake Corporation's legal team. There was no escape. Richard Hale was arrested at his office, and the Hale Group's stock plummeted to zero within 48 hours. Vanessa's trial was short. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison for her involvement in the conspiracy and the faked medical reports. On the day of her sentencing, Adrian's parents visited the villa. They looked different. The haughty, aristocratic pride that had defined them for decades was gone, replaced by a quiet, subdued humility. They sat in the grand living room, looking nervously at Owen, who was playing with his toy cars on the
Rug.
He's really a wonderful boy, Mrs. Blake said, her voice soft.
She
Reached into her bag and pulled out a beautifully wrapped box. Owen,
I brought this for you.
it's a limited edition train set. Owen looked at the box, then looked up at me, waiting for permission. I nodded. You can say thank you. Thank you, grandmother, Owen said politely, taking the box before returning to his cars. Mrs. Blake's eyes welled with tears at the word grandmother. She looked at me, her expression filled with deep regret. Lily, Mrs. Blake said, her voice trembling.
I don't know how to.
Apologize to you. We treated you terribly. We thought you were not good enough for our son. But we were the ones who were blind. It's okay, I said, pouring her a cup of tea. You didn't know. And besides, Adrian is very difficult to deal with sometimes. He has a lot of rules. I can understand why you wanted him to marry someone more normal. No, Mr. Blake said, his voice heavy. There is nothing normal about what we did. We allowed a monster like Vanessa into our home because of status, while we pushed away the only woman who truly cared for Adrian. We are deep in your debt. Lily, you don't owe me anything, I said, smiling. Just don't send any more
Checks.
It's very hard to remember where I put them. Mrs. Blake let out a wet, emotional laugh. She reached out, gently touching my hand. We won't. From now on, you are the mistress of the Blake family. Whatever you need, we are here. After they left, the villa returned to its peaceful quiet. That evening, Adrian took me out to the garden. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the white roses. The air was sweet with their scent. Adrian was dressed in a simple white shirt, his dark hair slightly messy from the wind. He stopped in the middle of the rose path, turning to face me. Lily, he said, his voice unusually nervous. Yes. I looked at him, wondering if he had dropped another pancake. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. He opened it, revealing a beautiful, simple ring with a single, perfect diamond that caught the golden light of the sunset. We registered our marriage 5 years ago, Adrian said, his voice soft but incredibly steady. But I never gave you a proper proposal. I never gave you a wedding. I want to do it right this time. Lily Parker, will you marry me? Again? I looked at the ring, then at his handsome, nervous face. Adrian, I said slowly. Yes, he held his breath, his eyes wide. If I say yes, do I have to wear that silver tracker again? Adrian's breath hitched, and then he let out a loud, joyous laugh. He stepped forward, sliding the ring onto my finger before pulling me into his arms, spinning me around in the middle of the rose garden. No trackers, he promised, his eyes shining as he looked down at me. I don't need a tracker to find you anymore, Lily. My heart will always lead me right to
You.
That's good, I said, wrapping my arms around his neck. Because my shoes are very comfortable, and I was planning to go for a walk tomorrow. I'll walk with you, he whispered, before leaning down to press his lips against mine. The kiss was sweet and long, filled with the warmth of 5 years of lost time, finally found. From the balcony of the villa, Owen was leaning over the railing, Buster's head resting right next to his.
Mom. Dad.
Owen yelled, his small voice echoing over the hills. Buster is hungry. Can we have dinner now? Adrian broke the kiss, a beautiful, bright smile on his face. He kept one arm wrapped tightly around my waist, his other hand holding mine. Let's go feed our family, Adrian said. Okay, I agreed, taking his hand. But you're not allowed to make the pancakes. And together, slow and steady, we walked back into the warmth of our home.